Alright, I'm gonna be level with you. I totally clickbaited you. I know this song already. I love this song, actually. I'm a huge Brutal Orchestra fan. I did not, however, lie about being a composer, and I do have some things to say about Mung's theme from Brutal Orchestra. If you clicked on this video, you probably know what Brutal Orchestra is. For those uninitiated, Brutal Orchestra is a turn-based strategy roguelike made by Talia Mare and Nico Delgado. If you want to know more about how great this game is, go watch this video, link in description. Okay, so, one of the coolest things about Brutal Orchestra is every single enemy has its own theme song. That's a crazy amount of music. This really is the Brutal Orchestra. The first of these foes the player will encounter is Mung. Mung is a laughably weak enemy taking the form of a fish slowly asphyxiating and flopping around on the ground. First encounters are extremely important in video games. They set the tone. Brutal Orchestra certainly has a unique tone. It takes place in a surreal depiction of purgatory inspired by the works of the medieval painter Hieronymus Bosch, with strange and disturbing creatures acting as enemies. So how does Mung's theme, called Give a Man a Fish by the game's composer, Publio Delgado, enhance the tone set by the visual and gameplay elements of the game, and prepare the player for what's to come? This song has already been playing in the background of this video for a couple minutes, but let's get a quick refresher in and listen to it again. And after that point, it just loops. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the analysis. Well, here's a transcription I made of Give a Man a Fish. We're going to start our analysis at the very beginning. Let's first figure out what key this part of the song is in. I'm sure you've all heard of major keys. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and all that. But there are different kinds of keys that also follow variations on these syllables, called solfege. Looking at the melody, the top line, it looks like we're in B-flat harmonic minor, which has the solfege do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. This is made clear by the song starting with a sol to do movement, which is a really common way to establish a key. The presence of me and ti in the melody are what tips us off that this is harmonic minor. If it was mi and ti, it would be major, and if it was me and te, it would be natural minor. To make things easier to read, let me label each note with its solfege. There we go. Whoa, that's a bit weird. In the accompaniment, the bottom line, we have a note that's not part of harmonic minor. We have me and then la. It would be pretty standard to hear a perfect fifth between these two notes, one of the most consonant or inoffensive intervals. However, the interval between me and la is just a tiny bit smaller than a perfect fifth. This interval is called a tritone, or a diminished fifth, and it's extremely dissonant. Alright, so what? There's a note that kinda sounds wrong. Well, the reason that's important is that this dissonance is setting the tone for the game. A dark comedy of disturbing creatures and people, which is made clear by the substitution of a perfect fifth with a tritone being present throughout the soundtrack. Another great example is, with apologies to Giovanni Battista Pamphili, the theme for my favorite enemy, the Sepulchre. Let's take a listen. So yeah, that tritone in the bass is pretty clear, but let's get back to Mung. Keep in mind that Mung's theme is fulfilling two purposes, setting the game's tone and representing the enemy Mung. We've established how it sets the tone, but how does it represent Mung? That's right, in the melody. It makes a lot of sense for the melody to directly represent Mung. The player's focus is going to be on the combat encounter, so the part of the music that represents the enemy is being put right in the player's face, in the melody. So how exactly does this melody capture the essence of Mung? Well, for starters, it's played with a slippery square wave synth that slides all over the place. The notes are also pretty short, and this combination of short note durations and the synth gliding between notes results in a pretty goofy sound, representing the absurdity of the encounter. On top of that, at the end of the phrase, the melody slides down a half step and then back up, kind of sounding like it's unsure of what note to play. Later in the game, mung is referred to as the emotional disaster, so that tracks, I guess. So this A section has established the concept that the accompaniment represents the game and the melody represents mung. Let's look at the next section for more examples. Alright, remember how we talked about keys earlier? Well, figuring out the key in this second section isn't quite as easy as it was in the first. There are a few conflicting clues that point us towards two different keys, B flat minor, just like the beginning, or E flat major. In order to understand these conflicting points, I need to talk about harmony. And boy do I love talking about harmony. In fact, I love talking about harmony so much that I'm gonna start shilling. I made a mostly accurate 15-minute video a while back that covers the way of analyzing harmony that we're going to be using. Functional harmony. If you want a deeper understanding on what I'm about to go into, then I recommend you give it a watch. Alright, I'm sure you just had a very informative and fulfilling 15 minutes. But just in case you didn't watch it, I'll fill you in on some important concepts. The biggest concept is dominant functioning chords and tonic functioning chords. Tonic chords act as a place of resolution, and dominant functioning chords act as a source of tension. Dominant chords almost always resolve to tonic chords, and the most tonic sounding chord is called, it's just called the tonic. The tonic is built on the first note in a scale, so a dominant chord usually points you towards what key something is in. A section of a song will typically start on the tonic, meander its way through some other chords, hit a dominant chord, and then end again on the tonic. Here lies our problem. The last chord in this section is called a B flat dominant 7. It literally has dominant in its name. Dominant 7s have chords that they almost always resolve to. In the case of B flat dominant 7, we're expecting an E flat major or minor chord after it. So let's listen to a B flat dominant 7 and then an E flat major chord. Sounds pretty resolved, right? But here's the thing. This resolution never comes in the song. After the B flat dominant 7, the song just loops, taking us right back to B flat minor. There's gotta be more going on here. Let's try working backwards. If B flat dominant 7 likes to go to an E flat chord, then what chord likes to go to a B flat chord? The answer is an F dominant 7 chord, or an F major chord. And look! The chord right before this B flat dominant 7 is an F major chord. So what if we just called that B flat dominant 7 chord a weird tonic? Despite the chord being a dominant 7, those last couple of bars sound pretty resolved to me. Let's listen to it real quick. Alright, don't get me wrong. There's definitely an argument that this section is an E flat major. In fact, the idea of being in a key without the tonic chord being present is a pretty divisive concept in modern music theory. To my ears, though, it sounds like we're in some form of B flat, so that's what I'm going to be sticking with. And hey, this total ambiguity also supports the uneasy tone of Brutal Orchestra, and this was definitely an intentional decision by Publio Delgado. But that's not the only aspect of the harmony in this section that adds to that. Check out this chord. This chord is built on the note Ra, which doesn't occur naturally in B flat minor. A major chord built on Ra has a special name. It's called the Neapolitan chord. The Neapolitan chord has been historically used to represent otherworldliness, and this context makes a lot of sense in Brutal Orchestra's truly bizarre setting. On top of that, the root of this chord is a tritone away from the next chord, F major, once again supporting this idea that uncertainty in the accompaniment is representing the game's tone. So how is the character of mung being represented in this section? Well, the melody is still using the same synthesizer as the beginning, but the percussion in this section also supports mung. Let's take a close listen to what the percussion in this section sounds like. I can hear four main elements: a kick drum that hits every beat, a clinky sound that hits every offbeat, a few variations of squelches that accent some of the more important beats, and a bubbly water droplet sound that has the most active rhythmic pattern out of all of these. The way this percussion is functioning is pretty standard. There's not much to say about it. What's most interesting here is the timbre, or distinct sound, of each of these elements. The bubbly sound and squelch noises are sounds a gross, slimy fish would make. It encapsulates mung in a very simple and clear way. That's really all there is to say about the percussion. It's directly representing mung by being the sounds that mung would make. So yeah, Publio Delgado was in a musically tricky situation of representing one of the silliest enemies in the game, while simultaneously introducing the player to the surreality of Brutal Orchestra's depiction of purgatory. He accomplished this really well by putting the goofy elements that represent mung in the foreground of the music with the melody and percussion, and by putting the unsettling elements that represent the game's tone in the background, with strange accompaniment and unclear harmony. That's pretty cool, I think. I hope you learned a thing or two, and thanks for watching.